On my way to the bank, I realized I had forgotten my wallet and had to return home, but the shock turned into something harder when I saw the most recent document, a transfer authorization scheduled for this Friday, moving the last $8,000 from my actual savings account into one of these phantom accounts. Today was Wednesday. They had 48 hours to finish emptying my life. Have you ever walked into your own home and felt like a stranger? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. If you've ever wondered how far someone would go to steal your entire life, this story will shake you to your core. Follow along as we uncover a crime that's been hiding in plain sight for months. The folder was sitting on my entry rug like a gift I never asked for. My name was on the cover in handwriting that wasn't mine. I was halfway to First National Bank that gray Tuesday morning when I patted my jacket pocket and felt nothing. My wallet was still sitting on the kitchen counter next to my coffee cup. I turned my old Honda around in the Kroger parking lot, annoyed but not worried. Just another small delay in what I thought would be an ordinary day. But the moment I stepped back through my front door, something felt wrong. The air was different, like someone had pressed pause on my life and forgotten to hit play again. My coffee cup sat exactly where I'd left it, still warm to the touch. But the front closet door stood open about 6 inches. I never left it open. A thin draft whispered through the hallway from somewhere it shouldn't. That's when I saw it, a manila folder lying on the floor near my welcome mat, marked with my full name in black ink I didn't recognize. Have you ever walked into your own home and felt like a stranger? That's exactly what happened when I picked up that folder. Inside were copies of bank statements, property deeds, and what looked like my signature, except it wasn't mine. My stomach dropped like I'd stepped off a cliff. Someone had been inside my home, planting papers that rewrote my life. The first document made my hands shake. It was a quitclaim deed transferring my small house, the one I'd paid off after 20 years of double shifts at the plant, into the name of Patricia Williamson. A woman I once trusted. The deed was notarized, stamped, and filed with Franklin County, as if I had willingly signed everything away. If this happened to you, would you even know? Subscribe so you never miss the warning signs. But here's what made my blood turn cold. Beneath the quitclaim deed were bank statements for accounts I'd never opened. Savings accounts, checking accounts, even a line of credit, all in my name, all showing regular transfers to Patricia's accounts in Louisville, Kentucky. The amounts weren't huge, maybe $300 here, $500 there. Small enough that I might not notice right away. Pause and count how many people have keys to your home. Write that number down. The shock turned into something harder when I saw the most recent document, a transfer authorization scheduled for this Friday, moving the last $8,000 from my actual savings account into one of these phantom accounts. Today was Wednesday. They had 48 hours to finish emptying my life. Suddenly, what I thought was a simple banking errand had become a fight for my entire existence. The wallet I'd forgotten wasn't the accident I assumed, it might have been the mistake that saved me. Because walking back through that door, at that exact moment, meant I caught the fraud before it was too late. The notary stamp was dated yesterday. I was supposed to be at work all day. She called 3 times while I stared at the papers. The 4th ring, I answered like nothing had changed. Good morning, honey, Patricia's voice came through my phone smooth as honey, same as always. Just checking to see how you're feeling today. You sounded a little tired yesterday. Yesterday. The same day someone notarized documents I never signed. I'm fine, I managed, spreading the forged papers across my kitchen table. Just getting ready to head out. Oh, perfect. I was hoping to catch you before your errands. Did you remember to bring your identification for the bank? You know how particular they can be about paperwork. My throat tightened. I hadn't told her about any banking errands. Let me take you back 6 months to when this nightmare began. Patricia Williamson walked back into my life at the worst possible moment. I was sitting in Dr. Martinez's waiting room, still shaky from my first heart episode, when she appeared like some kind of guardian angel. Margaret? Margaret Chen? Oh my goodness, is that really you? She looked exactly like success: pressed blazer, perfect makeup, leather briefcase that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. Patricia had been 3 years ahead of me at East High School, back when we were both just small-town girls with big dreams. "I'm a financial advisor now," she explained over coffee that afternoon. "I specialize in estate planning, especially for people like us who don't have children to pass things on to. You know, protecting what we've worked so hard for. Ever trusted someone who knew too much about your business?" She made it sound so sensible. "The government takes half of everything if you don't plan ahead, Margaret. But there are ways to protect your assets, legal ways that most people never learn about." Over the next few weeks, Patricia became a regular presence. She'd drop by with homemade cookies, always finding reasons to help organize my paperwork. "Let me just take a quick look at your deed," she'd say. "I want to make sure everything's in order for when you need it." She spoke about trusts and probate and beneficiaries in language that made my head hurt. But she was so confident, so professional. And she'd known my family when we were young. How could I not trust someone who remembered my mother's apple pie recipe? "You know what worries me," she said during one visit. "What happens if you have another heart episode and can't manage your affairs? We should set up some safeguards, maybe give me temporary power of attorney, just for emergencies." The papers she brought looked official. Bank forms, legal documents, signature pages that she said would streamline everything if something happened. I signed what she put in front of me, trusting that she had my best interests at heart. She asked if I'd been to the bank yet. I hadn't told her about my plans. The shoebox under my bed held 20 years of receipts. Now half of them didn't make sense. I pulled out every document I owned, spreading them across my living room floor like puzzle pieces. My original mortgage papers, insurance policies, tax returns, everything that proved who I was and what I owned. But as I sorted through them, gaps appeared where important papers should have been. My hands trembled as I opened each folder Patricia had helped me organize. She'd been so helpful, so thorough. "Let me make copies of everything," she'd said. "You should always have backups." Now I understood why. The first red flag was subtle: joint account statements from PNC Bank showing my name alongside hers. I'd never opened an account at PNC. Never even set foot in one of their branches. But there it was, my social security number, my signature, except the handwriting looked just slightly off. "When did you last check your original property deed? Be honest." I found more evidence tucked between my utility bills. Credit applications I'd never filled out, loan documents I'd never seen, and Patricia's business card paper clipped to my homeowner's insurance policy. Her card listed 3 different business names: Williamson Financial Services, Sunset Estate Planning, and Guardian Angel Advisors. The worst discovery came when I looked for my original property deed. The heavy manila folder where I'd kept it for 15 years was still there, but the deed inside was different. This version was a photocopy, not the original with the raised county seal. And the recording date had been changed from 2004 to 2019, 5 years after I'd supposedly met Patricia for coffee. Someone had stolen my original deed and replaced it with a fake. I grabbed my magnifying glass and examined every signature on every document. The differences were tiny but clear once you knew what to look for. My real signature had a slight upward curve on the M in Margaret. The forged versions were perfectly straight, like someone had practiced but couldn't quite get it right. One missing document can cost you everything. Subscribe to learn the red flags before it's too late. But the most chilling discovery was a handwritten note tucked inside my insurance folder, written in Patricia's neat cursive: M. Chen, Columbus property assessed at $180,000, minimal debt, no family oversight. Ideal candidate for gradual transfer protocol. Gradual transfer protocol. Like I was some kind of business transaction instead of a person. I found her calendar entries too, photocopied and left behind like breadcrumbs. MC, document signing 2 p.m., MC, bank account setup, MC, final transfer prep. Each entry corresponded to one of our friendly visits, when she'd brought cookies and asked me to sign just a few more forms. The timeline was perfect, methodical, and absolutely terrifying. Every cup of coffee, every helpful suggestion, every concerned phone call had been part of a plan to steal my life piece by piece. My original deed was gone. In its place, a photocopy with a different recording date. Mrs. Patterson had been watching my house for 15 years. She remembered the woman with the clipboard. I knocked on her door at 7 in the morning, still clutching the forged papers. Agnes Patterson answered in her housecoat, took one look at my face, and waved me inside without a word. "Agnes, I need to ask you something important," I said, settling into her familiar kitchen chair. "Do you remember seeing anyone at my house when I wasn't home?" Her eyes sharpened behind her reading glasses. At 78, Agnes noticed everything that happened on Maple Street. She'd been our unofficial neighborhood watch since before I moved in. "You mean the woman with the clipboard," she said immediately. "Pretty thing, always dressed for business. She's been coming around for months." My chest tightened. "What did she do?" "First time I saw her, she was taking pictures of your house from the street. Big camera, not just a phone. When I asked what she was doing, she said you'd hired her for insurance assessments." Insurance assessments. I'd never requested any insurance work. Agnes poured herself coffee and continued. "But then I saw her go inside when your car wasn't there. She had a key, acted like she belonged. Spent maybe an hour in there, came out with a briefcase full of papers." "When was this?" 2 weeks ago, maybe 3. "Thursday afternoon, because that's when I do my grocery shopping. I almost called you, but she seemed so professional. Said you'd asked her to photograph the interior for some kind of updated policy. Flagged this detail, unauthorized home photography. You'll see why it matters." The worst part came next. Agnes leaned forward, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. "She measured things too. Had one of those little tape measures, went around checking windows, door frames, even paced off the yard. When she saw me watching, she waved like we were old friends. My house had been treated like a piece of merchandise, catalogued and photographed for sale. While I was at work, trusting Patricia to help protect my future, she was inside my home stealing my present." "There's something else," Agnes said quietly. "Last Tuesday, she came back with a man. Older fellow, had a notary stamp. They were only inside for 10 minutes, but when they came out, she was smiling real big. Tuesday. The same day as the notary stamp on my forged quitclaim deed. Agnes, did you see what kind of car she drove? White BMW. License plate started with PAW. I remember because I thought it was cute, like a little animal paw. I had her license plate number, her vehicle description, and a witness who'd seen her inside my house with a notary. For the first time since finding that folder, I felt like I had weapons instead of just wounds. She took pictures of the inside. Said you told her to. The teller's face changed when she pulled up my account. Which address should I use for the statement? First National Bank felt different when you walked in knowing someone had been stealing from you. The marble floors that usually felt solid now seemed slippery. I approached Jennifer's window. She'd been handling my banking for 5 years, with Patricia's forged papers tucked in my purse like evidence. "Good morning, Mrs. Chen," Jennifer smiled. "What can I help you with today?" "I need to review all my accounts, Jennifer. Everything you have under my name and social security number." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, then stopped. Her smile faded. "Mrs. Chen, I'm showing 3 different addresses on file for you. Your Maple Street address, but also an address in Louisville, Kentucky, and a P.O. box downtown. Which one should I update as your primary?" My blood turned cold. I've never lived anywhere but Maple Street. Jennifer's screen reflected in her glasses as she scrolled through my records. "I see several account changes over the past 4 months. Your statements have been redirected to the Louisville address, and there are multiple new accounts opened with your information. Show me everything." What she printed out made my hands shake. 7 different accounts, all opened between February and May. Checking accounts I'd never used, savings accounts I'd never seen, and a home equity line of credit for $45,000 that had already been accessed. Quick question: when did you last verify all your bank accounts? This week? This month? Mrs. Chen, Jennifer said carefully, these accounts show regular activity. Large deposits and transfers, all authorized with your signature and PIN. Are you saying you didn't open these? I pulled out Patricia's forged documents. Does this signature look right to you? Jennifer compared the papers to my signature card on file. Even she could see the differences, the straight lines where mine curved, the pressure too light, the spacing too wide. I need to speak with the manager immediately, I said. And I need you to put a freeze on every account connected to my information. The manager, Mr. Harrison, reviewed everything with the calm efficiency of someone who'd seen financial fraud before. But when he pulled up the transfer schedule, his composure cracked. Mrs. Chen, there's a wire transfer scheduled for tomorrow morning. $42,000 to an account in Louisville. That's almost everything you have. They had 48 hours to empty everything. Subscribe now, your accounts could be next. My entire life savings, 20 years of careful budgeting and double shifts, was set to disappear in less than 24 hours. If I hadn't forgotten my wallet, if I hadn't come home at exactly the wrong moment, Patricia would have succeeded completely. Can you stop it? I asked. We can freeze your accounts right now, Harrison said, but the wire transfer was authorized with all the proper documentation. To reverse it, we'll need a court order or police report. He handed me a thick packet of paperwork. Fill this out for the fraud investigation. And Mrs. Chen? Get an attorney. Today. The largest transfer was set for Friday. Today was Wednesday. The attorney didn't look surprised. Elder financial abuse, he said. More common than you'd think. I sat across from David Chen in his downtown Columbus office, my hands gripping the folder of forged documents. The leather chair felt too big, like I was shrinking into myself. But his calm voice steadied me. Have you ever felt completely out of your depth, facing something you never imagined could happen to you? I asked him, my voice barely above a whisper. He leaned forward. Mrs. Williams, what you're showing me isn't random. This woman followed a playbook. She targeted you specifically. My stomach turned. Targeted? Think about it. You live alone, recently retired, own your home outright. You're exactly the profile they look for. He flipped through the papers I'd brought. The good news? She made mistakes. Mistakes? Her signature attempts are sloppy. The notary dates don't match public records. And this. He held up the quitclaim deed. She filed it too early. If she'd waited another week, this would be much harder to stop. I felt my first spark of hope in 2 days. So you can help? We have maybe 72 hours before these transfers become irreversible. But yes, I can help. He pulled out a yellow legal pad. First, we file emergency restraining orders against all your accounts. Second, we document everything with photos and timestamps. Third. He paused, studying my face. Third, we call this in as fraud. Federal fraud, since she's operating across state lines. Federal? The word felt huge in my mouth. Mrs. Williams, this woman stole your identity, forged legal documents, and attempted to transfer real estate without your knowledge. That's not just theft, it's organized crime. My chest tightened. I'd never thought of myself as someone involved with organized crime, even as a victim. What if she finds out we're fighting back? She already knows something's wrong. You missed that bank appointment yesterday, didn't you? I nodded. Then she's expecting pushback. The question is, do we push back smart, or do we let her finish what she started? I thought about my little house, the mortgage payments I'd made for 20 years, the garden I'd planted last spring. We push back smart. Good. He stood up. We start tonight. The courthouse has emergency filing until midnight. Can you be here at 10? Tonight? Mrs. Williams, she scheduled major transfers for Friday. Today is Wednesday. If we don't move tonight, there might not be anything left to save. The weight of those words hit me like cold water. 2 more days, and my entire life could vanish into her Louisville bank account. I'll be here, I said, standing to leave. As I reached the door, he called out, "One more thing. Do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight? After we file these papers, she's going to know you're fighting back." I turned around. "You think she's dangerous?" His pause lasted too long. "I think desperate people do desperate things. And after tonight, she's going to be very desperate." He could stop the transfers. But only if we moved tonight. I photographed every document twice. Once for the attorney, once because my hands were shaking. Back home, I spread everything across my kitchen table like pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. Each picture captured with my phone felt like building a fortress, one digital brick at a time. Do you know someone who's incredibly organized when they're scared? I asked myself, arranging the papers by date. That was me now, terrified, but methodical. The forged signatures were easier to spot once I knew what to look for. My real signature has a little curl at the end of the S in Williams. Hers didn't. Small detail, but it might save my house. I opened my laptop and did something I'd never done before, searched for her name online. Patricia Hendricks, financial advisor, Louisville, Kentucky. What I found made my coffee go cold. 3 news articles from the past 2 years. Different states, different victims, same methods. An elderly man in Tennessee who lost his farm. A widow in Indiana who woke up to find her savings emptied. Both described the same charming woman who offered to help organize their finances. Mrs. Patterson. I called across the fence. My neighbor was watering her roses. She walked over, concern creasing her face. "Everything okay, dear?" "That woman who came by last month, the one with the clipboard. Can you describe her again?" Mrs. Patterson set down her watering can. "Well-dressed, maybe 55, drove a nice car. Said she was doing insurance assessments for you." She paused. "Why? Was she not supposed to be here?" "No, she wasn't." I showed her Patricia's photo from the financial advisor website. "Is this her?" Mrs. Patterson's face went pale. "That's her exactly." "Oh my goodness, what did she do?" "She tried to steal my house." For the next hour, Mrs. Patterson helped me remember details I'd forgotten. The woman had taken photos inside my home, measured rooms, asked about my family situation. All under the guise of updating insurance records. She knew I lived alone, I realized aloud. She knew I didn't have children to check on my finances. "Should we call the police?" Mrs. Patterson asked. "Already working with a lawyer. But can I ask you to write down everything you remember? Dates, times, what she wore." "Of course." She hesitated. "Are you safe here tonight?" I looked at my little house, the one I'd called home for 15 years. Tonight, it felt different. Violated. I don't know. As the sun set, I packed a bag and drove to my cousin Ruth's house across town. Before leaving, I double-checked that every door was locked, every window secure. At Ruth's kitchen table, I continued photographing documents until my phone battery died. Each picture felt like evidence, like proof I existed, like insurance against being erased. The news article was from last year. Same woman, different victim, same method. Ruth made tea and sat with me as I worked. "You're going to beat this," she said quietly. I hoped she was right. I dialed her number with the attorney listening. My voice stayed steady until she laughed. "Patricia. It's me." I sat in David Chen's office, speakerphone activated, recording device running. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Oh, hello. How are you doing? Did you make it to the bank yesterday? The casual tone in her voice made my skin crawl. She knew exactly why I hadn't shown up. Actually, that's why I'm calling. I found some papers at my house that I don't understand. Silence. Then, papers? Documents with my name on them. About my property. Did you leave these? David Chen nodded encouragingly from across his desk. Stick to the script, his eyes said. What kind of documents? Her voice had shifted, become more careful. A deed. Bank statements for accounts I don't remember opening. That sort of thing. She laughed again, but it sounded forced now. Oh, those. Yes, I left some preliminary paperwork for you to review. Nothing official, just proposals for how we might restructure your assets. But they have official stamps. Notary seals. Well. Another pause. Sometimes I have to prepare documents in advance to show clients what the final versions will look like. David Chen was writing furiously on his legal pad. She just admitted to forging notary seals. Patricia, I'm a little confused. This deed says I transferred my house to you. That doesn't seem like a proposal. Now, don't worry about the technical details. These financial matters can be complicated for someone without experience. The condescension in her voice lit a fire in my chest. Have you ever been talked down to by someone who's stealing from you? I wanted to ask the phone. Instead, I kept my voice level. I may not have experience with financial fraud, but I can read my own name on a deed. Sharp intake of breath. Fraud? That's a very serious accusation. Yes, it is. Look, if you're having doubts about our arrangement, we can certainly discuss modifications. But calling it fraud. She paused. That's not helpful for either of us. David Chen held up his pad. She's trying to negotiate. Keep her talking. What arrangement, Patricia? I never agreed to give you my house. Of course you didn't give it to me permanently. This is just a temporary transfer for tax purposes. We discussed this. We never discussed anything like this. Her voice hardened. Listen, I've been doing this for 20 years. I know how to protect people's assets, and I know what's best for clients who don't have family to look after them. Clients who don't have family to look after them. The words hung in the air like a confession. Patricia, I want all these documents cancelled. Today. She laughed again, but this time it was different. Cold. Mean. You can't cancel something you don't understand. And you can't prove what you can't understand. David Chen grabbed his pen so fast it nearly flew across the room. She said something that made the attorney grab his pen. You can't prove what you can't understand. The line went quiet for a long moment. Then Patricia's voice came back, sweet as honey. I'll be in touch soon. The call ended. David Chen looked at me with something like amazement. Mrs. Williams, he said, she just confessed to everything. The courthouse stayed open until midnight for emergency filings. We were there at 11:47. I'd never been inside a courthouse at night. The hallways echoed with our footsteps, and the security guards' keys jangled like wind chimes. David Chen carried a briefcase thick with papers, restraining orders, fraud reports, emergency injunctions. Ever feel like you're living in a movie you never wanted to star in? I asked as we climbed the marble steps to the filing office. The night clerk, a woman about my age with kind eyes, looked up from her computer. Emergency filing? Yes, ma'am, David said, placing his briefcase on the counter. Multiple documents, all related to ongoing financial fraud. She didn't seem surprised. Happens more than you'd think. ID theft, elder abuse. Sad business. While David organized the papers, I sat in a hard plastic chair and tried to process the day. This morning I'd been a retired factory worker who forgot her wallet. Tonight I was a fraud victim filing federal complaints. Mrs. Williams? The clerk called me over. I need your signature on these affidavits. My hand was steady as I signed my real name, with the little curl at the end of the S that Patricia had missed. Each signature felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. "The judge will review these first thing tomorrow morning," David explained as we walked back to the parking garage. "By noon, all your accounts will be frozen, and any pending transfers will be blocked." I felt lighter than I had in days. So it's over? The immediate threat is over. But Mrs. Williams, this is just the beginning. We've stopped her from taking your money, but we haven't gotten justice yet. As we reached my car, my phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Too late. I showed David the screen. His jaw tightened. "She's bluffing," he said. "Everything was filed properly. She can't touch your accounts now." But my stomach dropped anyway. What if we'd missed something? What if she had one more trick? "David, what if?" "No what ifs," he said firmly. "You did everything right. You caught her, you gathered evidence, you fought back. The legal system is on your side now." I drove to Ruth's house through empty Columbus streets, my phone silent in the passenger seat. No more texts. No more calls from Patricia. At Ruth's kitchen table, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not from fear this time, but from exhaustion. From relief. From anger at what she'd almost taken from me. Ruth made hot chocolate and sat with me until nearly 2 a.m. "You're braver than you know," she said. The judge's signature was wet ink when my phone buzzed. Text from her, "Too late." I stared at those 2 words until they blurred. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tonight, for the first time in days, I felt protected. The private investigator found her house in 2 hours. The Mercedes in the driveway wasn't her only luxury. David Chen had recommended Jake Morrison, a retired police detective who specialized in financial crimes. "If she's running a multi-state operation," David said, "we need to know the scope." Jake called me Thursday morning with his preliminary findings. I was drinking coffee at Ruth's kitchen table when my phone rang. "Mrs. Williams?" "I'm sitting outside Patricia Hendrick's residence in Louisville. You need to see this." 20 minutes later, I was looking at photos on Jake's phone. The house was a colonial mansion in the Highlands, easily worth $500,000. The circular driveway held a black Mercedes, a white BMW, and a red convertible I couldn't identify. Have you ever wondered how someone affords 3 luxury cars on a financial advisor's salary? Jake asked. I stared at the photos. This was the woman who'd told me I needed to be careful with money in retirement. "There's more," Jake continued, scrolling through images. "The property records show she bought this place 18 months ago. Cash purchase. No mortgage." My throat felt tight. Cash. $700,000. Cash. I thought about my own modest savings, the nest egg I'd built over 30 years of work. Patricia had spent more on her house than I'd earned in a decade. Where does someone get that kind of money? Jake's expression was grim. "That's what we need to find out. I've got calls into contacts in Tennessee and Indiana, the other victims from those news articles you found." We drove past her neighborhood twice. The houses were enormous, with perfect lawns and imported cars. Patricia fit right in. She's not some small-time con artist, I realized aloud. This is her career. Exactly. And Mrs. Williams? She's not working alone. That afternoon, Jake called with more information. The Tennessee victim, Robert Chen, no relation to my lawyer, had lost his 200-acre farm to a similar scheme. The Indiana victim, Margaret Santos, had her entire retirement savings transferred to accounts she'd never opened. Same method every time, Jake explained. She befriends isolated older adults, gains their trust, then systematically transfers their assets using forged documents. How many victims? That we know about? At least 7 across 4 states. But Mrs. Williams, here's the thing, you're the first one who caught her in the act. The weight of that statement hit me like cold water. 7 other people had lost everything. I was just lucky enough to forget my wallet. Jake sent me photos of Patricia's business registration. She operated under 5 different company names: Hendricks Financial Services, Bluegrass Asset Management, River City Advisors, Louisville Legacy Planning, and Derby Financial Group. All registered to the same address, a post office box downtown. And get this, she's got business licenses in 6 states. I studied the paperwork on my phone screen. This wasn't opportunistic theft. This was organized, professional, systematic. What do we do now? Now? We call the FBI. This crosses state lines, involves multiple victims, and shows clear intent to defraud. Mrs. Williams, you've handed them a federal case. The mailbox had 7 different business names. All hers. That evening, I sat in my own living room for the first time since Tuesday. The house felt different, not violated anymore, but fragile. Like something precious I'd almost lost. Tomorrow, I would call the FBI. Tonight, I just wanted to be home. Agent Morrison said they'd been watching her for 6 months. I was victim number 12. The FBI field office in downtown Columbus felt like stepping into a television show. Gray carpet, fluorescent lights, and the kind of serious quiet that meant people were solving crimes. Agent Sarah Morrison met me in the lobby, a woman about my daughter's age with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. "Mrs. Williams, we've been hoping someone like you would come forward," she said, leading me to a conference room lined with whiteboards covered in photos and timelines. My stomach dropped when I saw the boards. Patricia's picture was at the center, connected by red string to photographs of houses, bank statements, and what looked like driver's license photos of elderly people. "How many?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "Confirmed victims?" 11 before you. But we suspect there are more who haven't realized what happened yet." Agent Morrison opened a thick file folder. Inside were stories that could have been mine: widowed retirees, people living alone, folks with modest savings and paid-off homes. All targeted. All cleaned out. The woman you know as Patricia Hendricks has been operating under that name for 3 years. Before that, she was Patricia Walsh in Florida, Patricia Martinez in Arizona, and Patricia Johnson in Michigan. I stared at the timeline on the whiteboard. Different names, different states, same method. Always the same method. She moves every few years when the heat gets too close, Agent Morrison continued. Changes her name, finds a new territory, starts fresh. But you've been watching her? We got a tip from a bank in Indiana 6 months ago. Large cash deposits, multiple account transfers, all the red flags. By the time we traced it back to her, she'd moved to Louisville and started the Kentucky operation. The Kentucky operation. Like I was part of some business plan instead of a person whose life had been turned upside down. "Mrs. Williams, your timing was perfect. You caught her before she could finish and disappear again." Agent Morrison spread out photographs on the conference table. Patricia's house, her cars, bank records showing deposits from all over the Midwest. The numbers made me dizzy, hundreds of thousands of dollars, all stolen from people like me. "Where does the money go?" I asked. Luxury purchases, real estate investments, and offshore accounts we're still tracking. She's smart about moving it around, but not smart enough. The most chilling part was the victim profiles. Every person on the board looked like me, over 60, living alone, financially stable but not wealthy. Someone had studied us like specimens. "We need your help," Agent Morrison said finally. "Your evidence stopped the immediate theft, but to build a federal case, we need more." "What kind of more?" She leaned forward. "We need you to meet with her one more time. With a wire." The words hit me like cold water. "You want me to wear a recording device?" "She doesn't know we're onto her yet. If she thinks she can convince you to drop the legal action, she might reveal information about other victims or where she's hidden the money." I thought about the other faces on the whiteboard. People who'd lost everything while I'd been lucky enough to forget my wallet. If I do this, will it help the others? Mrs. Williams, it could help us recover millions of dollars for all the victims. They needed me to do something dangerous, meet with her one more time. The recording device was smaller than a button, heavier than my fear. Agent Morrison's technical team fitted me with equipment that belonged in a spy movie. A tiny microphone clipped inside my blouse, a recording device the size of a credit card tucked into my purse, and an earpiece so small I could barely feel it. Just have a normal conversation, Agent Morrison coached me in the FBI van parked across from Panera Bread. Let her do most of the talking. If she asks about dropping the charges, act like you're considering it. My hands shook as I checked my purse for the third time. The recording device was there, invisible among my usual things: wallet, tissues, reading glasses. What if she figures it out? I asked. She won't. Patricia thinks she's the smartest person in the room. That's her weakness. Through the van's tinted window, I could see Patricia already sitting at a corner table, looking perfectly put together in a navy blazer and pearls. She waved when she saw me walking toward the restaurant entrance. Testing, testing, Agent Morrison's voice whispered in my earpiece. We can hear you perfectly. Inside Panera, the lunch crowd provided perfect cover. Business people on phones, mothers with strollers, college students with laptops. Nobody paying attention to two older women having what looked like a friendly chat. Margaret, thank you so much for meeting me, Patricia said, standing to hug me like we were old friends. You look wonderful. I sat down across from her, my purse carefully positioned on the table. I've been better. She ordered us both coffee and settled back in her chair. I know this whole situation has been confusing. Legal matters always are. But I think we can work something out that benefits everyone. What do you mean? Her smile reminded me of a cat watching a bird. Well, you filed all these complaints, gotten lawyers involved. That's created a lot of paperwork and expense for everyone. Someone stole my house, Patricia. What did you expect me to do? Oh, honey, nobody stole anything. We had an arrangement. Sometimes these financial planning strategies seem complicated to people who aren't used to them. I forced myself to stay calm. Explain it to me. For the next 20 minutes, Patricia wove a story that would have impressed a fiction writer. According to her, everything had been my idea. I'd asked her to help protect my assets from taxes. I'd wanted to transfer the property temporarily to avoid probate issues. I'd signed all those documents willingly. You see, Margaret, people your age often forget the details of financial planning. It's not your fault, it happens to everyone eventually. The condescension in her voice made my teeth hurt, but I kept my expression neutral. But the signatures don't match, I said. She waved a hand dismissively. Handwriting changes as we age. Banks see it all the time. Arthritis, medication side effects, stress, all perfectly normal. What about the other victims? The people in Tennessee and Indiana? Her coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. Other victims? The news articles I found. Same method, same story. Patricia set down her cup carefully. I have no idea what you're talking about. And frankly, this conversation is becoming unproductive. She reached across the table. Let me see your purse. My heart stopped. Agent Morrison's voice crackled in my earpiece. Stay calm. Don't let her search it. Why do you want to see my purse? I asked, pulling it closer to my chest. Because something feels wrong about this whole conversation. You're asking different questions than I expected. Her eyes were sharp now, calculating. The friendly mask was slipping. Margaret, are you recording this? The handcuffs clicked at exactly 2:17 p.m. I checked my watch because I wanted to remember. Patricia Hendricks, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. Agent Morrison's voice cut through the Panera lunch crowd like a knife through butter. Patricia's face went white, then red, then a shade I'd never seen before. This is ridiculous. I'm a licensed financial advisor. I was helping this woman. Ma'am, please put your hands behind your back, the second agent said, already moving around the table. The restaurant had gone completely quiet. Everyone staring at our corner table like we were dinner theater. A mother covered her child's eyes. A teenager held up his phone to record. Margaret, tell them this is a mistake, Patricia said, her voice rising with panic. Tell them we had an arrangement. I looked at her across the table, this woman who'd sat in my kitchen, eaten my cookies, and systematically planned to steal my entire life. We never had any arrangement, Patricia. You forged my signature and tried to take my house. The handcuffs snapped shut. The sound was final, like the ending of a book I'd never wanted to read. Agent Morrison helped me stand up. My legs felt shaky, like I'd been running even though I'd been sitting for an hour. Mrs. Williams, you did perfectly, she said quietly. We got everything we needed. As they led Patricia toward the door, she twisted around to look at me one more time. Her perfect makeup was smudged now, her neat hair falling across her face. You have no idea what you've done, she called back. This isn't over. The word sent ice through my veins, but Agent Morrison squeezed my shoulder. It's over for her. She's going away for a long time. Outside in the parking lot, other agents were searching Patricia's white BMW. They pulled out boxes of files, laptop computers, and what looked like printing equipment. What's all that? I asked. Evidence. Document templates, victim lists, bank account information. Enough to connect her to every fraud she's committed in the past 5 years. I watched them load Patricia into the back of a federal car. Through the window, I could see her talking rapidly to the agent beside her, gesturing with her cuffed hands. What's she saying? Probably trying to make a deal. Offering information about other criminals in exchange for a lighter sentence. Will that work? Agent Morrison shook her head. Not with the evidence we have. She's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. As the car pulled away, I felt something I hadn't expected, sadness. Not for Patricia, but for all the people she'd hurt. All the lives she'd turned upside down for money. Mrs. Williams, there's something else, Agent Morrison said. We found evidence of at least 6 more victims we didn't know about. Your bravery today is going to help a lot of people get their lives back. I thought about the faces on the FBI whiteboard, all those people who'd trusted the wrong person. What happens now? Now? You go home to your house, in your name, and sleep in your own bed. The way it should be. As they led her away, she turned back. This isn't over. The deed came back in my name on a Thursday. The house felt like home again. I was drinking my morning coffee when the courier arrived with the corrected property documents. 3 weeks of legal battles, FBI investigations, and sleepless nights had finally produced a simple manila envelope with my name on it, in my own handwriting this time. Inside was my quitclaim deed, properly restored, with Patricia's forged signature crossed out in official red ink. The Franklin County stamp looked exactly like it should. My house was mine again, legally and completely. I walked through each room like I was seeing it for the first time. The kitchen where Patricia had sat at my table, pretending to be helpful while planning to steal everything. The living room where she'd spread out those fake documents and convinced me to sign my life away. The bedroom where I'd hidden that shoebox full of receipts that ultimately saved me. Everything looked the same, but felt different. Safer somehow. The phone rang around noon. David Chen, my attorney, sounded cheerful for the first time since we'd met. Margaret, I have news. The FBI recovered most of the money from Patricia's accounts. You should see deposits in your checking account within 48 hours. All of it? Every penny she stole, plus interest. The federal seizure laws are very clear about returning stolen assets to victims. I sat down hard in my kitchen chair. After weeks of wondering if I'd lost everything, the idea of getting it back felt like winning the lottery. What about the other victims? They'll get their money back too. The FBI has been contacting families all week. Some of them didn't even know they'd been robbed. That afternoon, I did something I'd been afraid to do for 3 weeks. I drove to First National Bank and walked up to Jennifer's window. "Mrs. Chen," she said brightly. "How are you feeling?" "Much better. I'd like to check all my account balances, please." She printed out my statements with a smile. Every account showed exactly what it should. No mystery transfers, no unauthorized access, no forged signatures. Just my money, where it belonged. "Jennifer, can I ask you something? How often should people check their accounts?" "Monthly at minimum," she said. "But Mrs. Chen, after what happened to you, I'd recommend weekly. Maybe even set up alerts on your phone for any transactions over $100. Walking home, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not just because my money was safe, but because I'd learned something about myself I didn't know before. When my entire life was threatened, I'd fought back. I'd been brave when I needed to be. That evening, Ruth came over with homemade soup and listened while I told her about the deed, the money, and the relief of having everything back to normal. "So it's really over?" she asked. "The legal part is over. Patricia's in federal custody awaiting trial. The money's back. The house is mine." "But..." I looked at my sister, who knew me well enough to hear the hesitation in my voice. "But I keep thinking about all those other people. The ones who weren't lucky enough to forget their wallet." The phone rang. Another elderly woman, another similar story. I didn't plan to become an advocate. But when the next victim called, I couldn't hang up. "Mrs. Williams? My name is Dorothy Martinez. Agent Morrison gave me your number. She said you might understand what I'm going through." Dorothy's story was heartbreakingly familiar. A charming financial advisor who'd befriended her after her husband's funeral. Helpful visits that turned into document signings. Bank accounts she'd never opened, showing up on credit reports she'd never seen. "I feel so stupid," Dorothy whispered through the phone. "How could I let someone steal my whole life?" "You're not stupid," I told her, remembering how I'd felt the same way. "These people are professionals. They study us, they plan everything, they know exactly what to say." That conversation led to another, then another. Agent Morrison started giving my number to fraud victims across the Midwest. People who needed to talk to someone who understood, who'd been through the same nightmare and come out the other side. Within 2 months, I was driving to community centers, senior living facilities, and library meeting rooms, sharing my story and teaching people what to watch for. How many of you have been contacted by a financial advisor who sought you out? I'd ask the crowds of silver-haired faces. Someone who called you, or knocked on your door, or approached you in a public place. Hands would go up. Too many hands. Red flag number 1, I'd continue. Legitimate financial advisors don't cold call elderly people. They don't show up uninvited. They work by referral and reputation. I learned to recognize the look in people's eyes when they realized they might be victims. The same shock and disbelief I'd felt that Tuesday morning when I found the folder on my entry rug. After one presentation at the Riverside Senior Center, an 80-year-old man named Frank approached me with shaking hands. "Mrs. Williams, I think I signed something I shouldn't have. There's this woman, says she's helping me avoid estate taxes." Frank's situation was caught early enough to stop. We got him to a lawyer, filed the right paperwork, protected his assets. Another Patricia Hendricks wannabe shut down before she could finish the job. The local news interviewed me for a story about elder fraud awareness. "What would you say to other seniors who think this could never happen to them?" the reporter asked. "I thought the same thing," I answered. "I was careful with my money, didn't trust strangers, kept my personal information private. But these criminals don't approach you as strangers. They become your friends first. That's what makes them so dangerous." The story aired on a Thursday evening. By Friday morning, my phone was ringing with calls from across Ohio. People sharing their stories, asking for help, wanting to know how to protect themselves. 6 months after Patricia's arrest, I received a letter from the FBI. She'd pled guilty to 23 counts of wire fraud and elder abuse. 23 victims across 6 states. The sentence was 18 years in federal prison. I kept that letter on my refrigerator next to a photo from my first fraud prevention seminar. 30 seniors who now knew what to watch for, how to protect themselves, and who to call if they needed help. My house still sits on the same street in Columbus, but I'm not the same person who forgot her wallet that Tuesday morning. That person was just trying to protect what was hers. This person is trying to protect what's everyone's, the right to age with dignity, security, and trust. The work continues.